I'm Miriam McNabb, Editor-in-Chief at DroneLife.com, your source for news on the commercial drone industry. And I'm delighted to be with you here today for DroneFest. I'm joined by a panel of experts from all over the industry for our discussion on the future of unmanned systems. It should be a great conversation. I'd like to ask our distinguished panelists to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll get started. Anna, would you please start?
Sure, thanks, Miriam. So I'm Anna Dietrich. I am the co-executive director of the Community Air Mobility Initiative, CAMI, and we are focused on empowering and educating state and local decision makers as they figure out how to navigate and plan for urban air mobility, advanced air mobility, all the new cool things that fly. I came into that space with an engineering background. Through an entrepreneurial route, I was the founding chief operating officer of Terrafugia, and did that until about 2014, and then have been doing consulting in the certification and government relations space since, and realized that there was a need to support these local decision makers. So that's how we got to CAMI, which is about a year old at this point.
Great, thank you so much for being here. Michael, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, Michael Hillender, CEO of Airspace Link, and our company is focused on integrating drones into the national airspace and into communities, into local governments, state and local governments. We really focus on 4 areas. One is on the federal side. We're a low altitude authorization notification capability company. We provide these services to recreational pilots, Part 107, and then some advanced operations on the federal side. And I think we're tied into 726 airports today. We've built a similar data exchange for state and local governments where to get them involved, we started integrating ground risk and ground hazards into the platform, such as schools, hospitals, jails, population densities, traffic counts, and a lot of things that go into transportation planning, but from the aspects of ground safety. What is the probability of hitting someone on the ground? And then finally, we serve a lot of that data and APIs out to the drone industry to be used into safety cases or operational planning and things of that sort. So that's a little bit about Airspace Link.
Thanks so much. Don, you're from True Weather Solutions.
Hi, how are you? Yes, Don Birchhoff. I'm the CEO and founder of True Weather Solutions. We're a micro weather data and analytics company that translates complex weather data into simple insights for weather sensitive businesses, focusing right now very heavily on the drone industry. Because of our background, I'm an Air Force veteran meteorologist, but I ran an Air Force base, ran in emergency operations centers, have lots of hours of flight time on tankers. And so based on that operational experience and knowing what the challenges are going to be here in the future with micro weather and impacts to the drone industry, we've built a platform that is very focused on this industry and looking at how we can improve outcomes, mission safety, as well as ROI for end users, because it is going to be a challenge, especially in areas where there's weather, to really find those right spots where you can fly and make sure you don't miss them and you're out there flying when you can. And when you can't fly, making sure people are doing other things for the business. So that's what we're doing. We're at the New York State Test Range. We're working in several projects right now with the FAA up in New York, UPP2, and we're doing some other work in Ohio, the state of Ohio, building an alerting system. And I'm happy to be here today. Thanks.
Great. Laurent.
Hello, everyone. Thrilled to be here as well. So I represent Unifly, General Manager for our operations in North America. Unifly focuses on UAS traffic management, or UTM. What we do is actually we partner with national and local authorities a little bit around the globe to help them integrate UAS into the airspace. Unifly has been founded in 2015 by former air traffic controllers, and we've been really involved with many international organizations like ICAO, CANSO, on the standardization aspects, ASTM, EuroK, and many programs looking at advancing UAS, like CSRGU, the European Next Gen program, if you like. So I'm based in New York, as I mentioned, responsible for operations in North America. And before joining Unifly in 2017, Similar to Anna, I also have an engineering background, and I was sales manager for software solutions at Siemens. So similar industries.
Great. Thank you so much to all of the panelists. We have a really broad topic to discuss. We're talking about the future of unmanned systems, but one of the sort of common themes from all of our businesses in the drone industry is the safe integration of drones into the airspace, into the existing air traffic. So I'd like to start today by addressing a question to you, Anna. How do you see unmanned aircraft technology paving the way for and integrating with other forms of transportation? So including like urban air mobility and passenger carrying flights, because those are very future forward applications for drones. They're not just small drones, but really kind of thinking big.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I feel like there's a really powerful opportunity that we have as an industry of things that fly to take the experience that we're building in a relatively low complexity, low risk environment with small unmanned aircraft, even up into larger unmanned aircraft, and grow that into something that is applicable to manned or passenger carrying aviation. So it's a phenomenal opportunity to be able to test out these systems in an aircraft that doesn't have people on board. So the consequences of failure can be lower. And that lets you try things that maybe you wouldn't be comfortable trying in other situations. So I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from the drone industry and from SUAS operations that will be directly applicable to sort of the longer term vision of urban air mobility and advanced air mobility. And I think that those things aren't as far away, at least at an initial stage, as folks tend to think. I think there's full-size aircraft that are being flown on a regular basis. There's aircraft that are fairly well along in their certification programs. So I think within the next 5 to 10 years, we will be seeing commercial operations from those aircraft, those passenger carrying aircraft. And then the question becomes, how quickly can we integrate the technology that we're proving out in the unmanned space into those passenger carrying aircraft in a way that allows us to scale operational complexity, to scale volumes of operation, to kind of increase the network capacity and sort of realize that longer term vision. So I think we'll get started with something in urban air mobility that looks a lot more like general aviation today. And then as we merge the technology that's being developed in the unmanned world into that space, that will sort of be the key to unlock a lot of more interesting operations down the road.
Great. Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that particular question, or you want to?
Yeah, I'd love to go from the other way too. So we work with transportation departments that are used to working on the ground. For example, in Michigan, there's the connected corridor between Ann Arbor and Detroit, where they're investing quite a bit of money into putting in infrastructure to support those autonomous vehicles. At the same time, we're looking at putting in infrastructure to support better communications, surveillance systems to support beyond visual line of sight operations for package delivery. And some of the investment that's going into that is public-private, and that's to support things along the supply chain for just-in-time parts deliveries for some of the large manufacturers in Michigan. And those things are happening today, and it's coming from the ground up. And we're also supporting from the air down to meet in the middle, to put in the right infrastructure to create a repeatable, scalable solution. And we're seeing that happen more and more from state to state.
So a lot kind of goes into this idea of repeatable, scalable, complex operations. Let me direct this to you, Laurent. Unifly has been partnering with a lot of aviation authorities around the world. We've heard about Unifly for many years now. Based on your experience, do you see trends as to how authorities worldwide in other regions outside of the U.S. plan to enable those kind of complex operations?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Let me start with probably the regulatory framework, and then slowly moving to the perspective from the UTM provider. So from a regulatory framework, before we can get to the type of operations Anna just referred to, there are a lot of building blocks that need to be worked on, most definitely. And it's being slowly addressed. If we look at not so far from us, Canada, for instance, just published a proposition a couple of months ago, well, a bit more than that now, for low-risk BV loss operations. That is based on the SORA framework and population on density. So really the ground-based risk plays a big role in there. When we look at Europe, for instance, the remote ID rule will become effective in 2021. EASA also proposed a rulemaking for BV loss flight in urban areas. So a little bit more complex operations over there. And it's also based on SORA population density. I think the publication is expected Q3 2021. And closer to us in the US, indeed, we still expect the FAA to release the final rule on remote ID and tracking by the end of this year. But as you see, those are really building blocks. One of the common elements in those complex operations, coming now to the UTM perspective, is actually those services that provide pre-flight and in-flight capabilities like situational awareness, compliance with the regulations, and especially looking at remote ID and tracking, we see that those are foundational services to enable more complex operations. Thinking of real-time tracking enables conformance monitoring, in-flight deconfliction, airspace capacity management. So those are intermediary steps that we believe are crucial and critical to advance to more complex operations. Now, how are those services being provided? That's really, from our experience in multiple regions, we observe that there have been two starting points, but actually moving to the same trends. And those two approaches have been the monolithic approach. If you look at countries like Germany, Poland, Canada, the air navigation service provider, so the national authority, is acting as the sole UAS service supplier, USS, to provide those UTM services. On the other side of the spectrum, we've seen the FAA or Switzerland, or now we heard about Australia is moving in that direction as well, that delegates services to the industry. But those are two different starting points for the same trend. That is, we'll see that the UTM approach is moving towards a kind of hybrid system where some services make sense to be offered by the authorities, those that require a single source of truth, definitely airspace data, other type of data that help deconfliction, facilitating deconfliction. But other services make sense to be provided by the industry. So this experience around the world, we've seen that, to sum up, have been starting from two different approaches and eventually moving to the same trends.